I'm William SRD, and yes, this entire channel is a thirst trap. Thank you for asking. Okay, so you clicked on a YouTube video called How to Play D&D with No Friends. Are you like, okay? Do you need to talk? I get the sense that this is actually something people are weirdly stressed about. You either don't have enough friends to play the game, or what friends you do have just aren't interested. I'm here to tell you that you've got the script turned entirely backwards. Friends don't cause D&D. D&D causes friends. You have been thinking way too small with your recruiting. You should not just be recruiting close friends if you're trying to start a D&D game. You are the one who has the advantage. Everybody else has to try and get in your game. You are the one with the leverage. There are a massive number of people who want to play D&D and very few groups who are actually up and running. So, start inviting those acquaintances who you think could be interested, people you don't necessarily know all that well yet. Start inviting your classmates, start inviting your coworkers, your second cousin, whoever. You might be thinking, well, I don't really want to play D&D without a close group of friends there with me. And that's okay, because this group you're building, they might not be your closest friends now, but by the time the campaign's done, they will be. It's completely fine to ask people you don't know all that well to play D&D. Some of my closest friends have been people I met like twice, and I offered to invite them to a D&D game, and now we're fantastic friends. The worst someone can say is no, and you can handle a no. And if you do have some confirmed players already, then ask them if they know anybody who might be willing to join. That's a fantastic way to meet people. If you're watching this video, there is a high possibility you've never actually gotten the chance to play a D&D game before. So you may not know about this magical bonding power it has. There are very few things in this world that can build as strong, vibrant, and resilient a friend group as Dungeons & Dragons can. There's something about the hobby that just creates bonds. It's hanging out with your imagination, and there's this innate vulnerability to it. The strongest bonds I have ever had have almost always come from Dungeons & Dragons. You don't get friends like this, especially as an adult, without Dungeons & Dragons, or something like it. A shared hobby that you can all belong to. And whatever friends you have now are going to pale in comparison compared to the friends you make playing Dungeons & Dragons. All these people you are inviting to the game, they might be acquaintances that you only faintly know now. They're gonna be people that you're not all that close to. But in a few weeks, in a few months, these are gonna be your best friends. Now, obviously, this assumes that you have a dungeon master, or more specifically, that you are willing to be a dungeon master. But what if you're not willing to be a DM? I mean, I'd start out by saying maybe you should reconsider. It's not as difficult as it looks. Your players are going to be accommodating with you, especially if they know that you are new. If you're shy and you're nervous about DMing for a big group of people at once, then you should consider DMing a one-person one-shot for one of your close friends to get into practice and into the habit, so that you're not going in completely blind and you have one less thing to worry about on your first game for a full group of players. But let's suppose you are unwilling to DM at all. You can always gather a group of new players and ask for someone to volunteer to learn how to DM for the group. If everybody wants to play, someone will be willing to learn how to DM. Now, if none of those things I've just recommended are an option for you, perhaps you have a rare immune disease and you live in a bubble, or you're an Arctic researcher watching this video from a secluded outpost, then there are ways to find groups online. Now, once again, your life will be made way easier if you're willing to DM. Just go onto any online RPG website and post that you are a DM who is LFG. You will be absolutely swarmed with people wanting to play with you, and you can afford to be picky. You can afford to interview your people and pick out only the good ones. The negotiating power is all yours, not the people applying, so you can find a good group of people. If, on the other hand, as before, you are not willing to DM, then this becomes significantly more difficult. But you can search all of those LFG spaces that I had mentioned earlier, and you can look for those LFG posts. However, it will be much more difficult to find a game this way because, as I said, the negotiating power leans heavily on the DM side and not on yours. You can also consider creating a post, just like what we said with your friends, saying, first-time player, looking for other first-time players, we'll figure out amongst ourselves who is going to DM, and you might actually get some traction that way with other nervous new players who will likely be relieved to be in a situation where they're not going to be intimidated by older veteran players who maybe have expectations that the new players would feel like they might not meet. I'll also point out that there is a new virtual reality game called Demio, which I have not played yet, but I've heard wonderful reviews, that is entirely about having a computer DM for a group of players. These can be players that you bring on your own, or you can enter the matchmaking thing and be matched with a group of players. I have heard lots of people saying that they have met really cool groups of people on Demio that they now play with regularly within Demio, and a few groups I have heard have transitioned away from Demio onto traditional tabletop systems. Finally, if you haven't got any other options, you can resign yourself to getting your DnD fix elsewhere. There's a vast amount of D&D content or tabletop content in other mediums. Name your favorite system and there will be outside media for it. There are classic D&D books. Pathfinder has a comic book series that's apparently quite popular. There's TV shows and movies that are based off of the content. And let's not forget computer RPGs. Computer RPGs are a fantastic medium to play D&D if you are completely alone and have no options of forming a group. I personally would recommend Pathfinder Kingmaker, which is based off of the Pathfinder campaign module of the same name. It's a really fun little game with a surprising amount of heart to it. The reason I would recommend it over other CRPGs is that the companions you get along the way are quite vibrant and they feel very much like a group of friends that you would play D&D with in a sense. I'd also be remiss if I did not mention that Pathfinder is putting out another video game very soon in September, I believe, and it is made by the exact same production company. It's called Wrath of the Righteous. So if you're looking for something shiny and new to get your tabletop fix, give Wrath of the Righteous a shot. I bet it's going to be fantastic. So there you go. All is not lost for you, you poor friendless geek. That was the video. I hope this was helpful for some of you, and if you found it to be something that helped you, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. I make content every single Thursday, and I'm hoping I'll see you next week.